I would say cheating. I mean, I think it's wrong for them to kick out our folks so we can't watch the process. Let the process play out and don't rush people to say, well, just accept it.
We cannot let this stand, and we will fight every irregularity to the very last, because every voter deserves their vote to be counted, and they deserve to know whether or not these irregularities mean fraud.
Somebody was told, you need to backdate ballots to make them legal, ballots that were illegal under the law.
We had a situation in Michigan where one county had a 6,000 vote flip from Biden to Trump because of this Dominion voting machine.
Despite her commitment to running the RNC with a severe Donald Trump influence, Ronna McDaniel's election lies weren't as meaningful to him as adding yet another nepotism hire to replace her. But she bounced back and nabbed an opportunity at NBC News, but only for a couple of days.
It's my understanding that MSNBC's leadership did not object to Ronna McDaniel being hired by NBC News when the matter first arose. But when the hiring was announced, and MSNBC staff essentially unanimously and instantly expressed outrage, our leadership at MSNBC heard us, understood, and adjusted course. We were told this weekend in clear terms, Ronna McDaniel will not be on our air. Ronna McDaniel will not be on MSNBC. And I say that and give you that level of detail because there has been an effort since by other parts of the company to muddy that up in the press and make it seem like that's not what happened at MSNBC. I can assure you that is what happened at MSNBC. Ronna McDaniel will not appear on MSNBC. So says our boss since Saturday, and it has never been anything other than clear.
I guess her big appearance on NBC's Meet the Press wasn't enough to quell the network-wide rejection, especially since she couldn't help but to continue to protect Trump over his role in attempting to subvert our democracy.
Mitch McConnell said that Donald Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Do you agree with him?
You know, I don't think he wanted that attack to happen on the Capitol, but I will say that attack is a dark day in our history. There's nothing to be proud of about that day. There's nothing that we can look back and say this was good. It's changed our whole country. And so I condemn what happened on January 6th. Do I think he wanted that to happen or pushed that to happen? I don't.
Well, now he seems to be very proud about it. He calls it a beautiful day. Again, he's talking about freeing those who've been convicted. If you ask some of those who were convicted, they say they were there because Trump asked them to be there. Does he not bear responsibility for that day?
First of all, the RNC was not there on January 6th.
But what about Trump? I want to ask you about Trump, because Mitch McConnell says Donald Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Was he?
I've said I don't think he wanted the attack on the Capitol.
Was he responsible, though? He may not have foreseen it, but was he responsible?
Well, when I say that, I don't mean he wanted that to happen, so I don't hold him responsible for that. But I do think that it was a terrible day, and it's not something to be celebrated, and it wasn't a beautiful day.
No, there's some layers to how this entirely messy situation went down, and Kristen Welker's insistence to get McDaniel to clear the air on the lies that she's been telling as head of the RNC was actually one of the more uncomfortable interactions that Ronna anticipated before NBC brass calmed her nerves in meetings. Well, McDaniel was right, and the fallout started on the same show with Chuck Todd, who lobbed some bombs that people might usually assume only happen behind closed doors.
Look, let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself, or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? And look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this, because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So that's where you begin here. And so when NBC made the decision to give her NBC News' credibility, you got to ask yourself, what does she bring NBC News? This interview is always going to be looked through the prism of who is she speaking for, right? I think you did everything you could do. You got put into an impossible situation, booking this interview, and then all of a sudden the rugs pull out from under you. You find out she's being paid to show up. It's unfortunate.
Again, she voiced concerns about the talent, specifically on MSNBC, wanting nothing to do with her. And the dominoes started to fall on air in public.
We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it for several reasons, including, but not limited to, as lawyers might say, Ms. McDaniel's role in Donald Trump's fake elector scheme and her pressuring election officials to not certify election results while Donald Trump was on the phone.
To be clear, we believe NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices to provide balance in their election coverage. But it should be conservative Republicans, not a person who used her position of power to be an anti-democracy election denier.
There's this reputation that MSNBC is somehow, different, maybe less than, because we platform opinion. Sure. I will tell you, over the last 48 hours, it has been the opinion anchors most upset about the liar. And I won't say most. Most, because I think Chuck Todd made clear that he went first. He did something really brave. I talked to him yesterday. I said, I'm knitting you a cape. But so let me take back the word most. But it's not about the ideological spectrum. It's not, as Tim said, it's not who you vote for. It's, do you start at a shared set of facts?
And I will also say, if you care what I think about this, I will tell you the fact that Ms. McDaniel is on the payroll at NBC News, to me, that is inexplicable. I mean, you wouldn't hire a wise guy. You wouldn't hire a made man like a mobster to work at a DA's office, right? you wouldn't hire a pickpocket to work as a TSA screener. And so I find the decision to put her on the payroll inexplicable. And I hope they will reverse their decision.
It turned into a public battle where known voices on the network openly criticized leadership for being so clueless about the latest decision. They must have thought that it would simply be another former Republican that was ousted from the party and willing to finally be themselves and speak to the dangers that they witnessed and even took part in before their conservative colleagues finally went too far or simply kicked their asses out. I mean, there's Joe Scarborough, Nicole Wallace, Michael Steele, who was another former head of the RNC, by the way. There's former Representative David Jolly and Steve Schmidt that show up on the network. It's a tactic that they figured they had rolled out so well that it would be seamless for her, but they forgot. She was more of a MAGA Republican than any of the others. And sadly, they were the ones that suffered from memory loss, not the talent.
I stopped inviting Trump liars like her on this program in 2016 because I've never seen a satisfying, successful interview of a Trump liar and have never thought that I alone could crack the code of how to interview a Trump liar. MSNBC will not use Ronna McDaniel as a political analyst, but I do have a few questions for her whenever she might want to come on this program. And I'll make it easy for her. I'll tell her the questions ahead of time. My first question would be, why did you change your name for Donald Trump? Before Trump ran for president, her name was Ronna Romney McDaniel. How does that feel, to change your name to curry favor with a madman because he doesn't like your uncle? How did you explain that to your kids?
So before she would get tossed into those kinds of interviews, they quickly reversed course and ended her contract 8 days faster than Anthony Scaramucci's time in Trump's administration, who ironically still appears on the network to rail on his former boss and the dangers that he presents. But still, the entire debacle could be an expensive one for NBC to shoulder, as McDaniel is planning to sue for being fired right after being fired. But Hugh Hewitt's assessment is just as dramatic as the internal fighting at NBC.
I've never seen anything this brutal since I got started in media in 1990. Ronna is going to sue everyone who defamed her for breach of contract, for intentional infliction of mental distress. They are going to sue for the destruction of her business opportunities that come from being on TV. I think they made a terrible decision, and they allowed the MSNBC bleed to take over their network, and the cult has taken over the news division, and it's going to hurt the 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump are not going to watch NBC News.